Welcome back to the course on soil mechanics. In the last class, we were discussing about how do we categorize the soil or classify the soil based on the grain size or grain shape. And then we went on to talk about what is meant by a clay mineral, what are the predominant clay minerals that are abundantly available in different types of soil deposits, and in which we have talked about what is called as the collinite mineral, illite mineral, and then subsequently we have talked about what is montmorillonite mineral. So in today's class, we'll start with what is called as specific surface area. In the last class already we had an idea of what is meant by specific surface area. So let us try to understand little more in detail about what is the specific surface area. Depending on the size of the particle, how the specific surface area of the soil mass is getting changed, whether it will increase or whether it will decrease depending on the size of the particle. And out of those three minerals what we have been talking about in the last class, the specific surface area is going to be higher, in which case is what we'll try to once again discuss. So specific surface area, SSA, is what we have defined it as the surface area of that soil particles divided by the mass of that particular soil particles. Okay, so it is defined as the total surface of all the surface area of all the individual particles that are existing in a given mass of the soil. Okay, so that's how we go on to define what is your specific surface area. Let's say, for example, I am considering one cubical element soil grain or soil mass or soil grain of cubical shape. Exactly speaking, you don't talk about a soil grain which is of cubical in shape, but I am approximating. Let's say the dimension of this cubical element is D. The width of that cubical element is D. And if I am going to write down what is the specific, if I want to calculate what is the specific surface area of this particular cubical element, based on which we'll get an idea of if the dimension of that particular particle is so and so, how the specific surface area is subsequently getting affected. Okay, so what is going to be the surface area of this cubical element? Surface area, you are going to have 6 faces for this cubical element. So 6 into the surface area of each face is nothing but it is D square divided by mass of that particular element. So mass of that particular element is what I can write it as volume of that element into the mass density of that particular element. So this is further what I can write it as 6d square divided by the volume of the cubical element is what I can write it as d cube into rho. Rho is the mass density of that particular soil grain. So d square, d cube gets cancelled. What I'll have is your specific surface area is what I can simply write it as 6 by d into rho. From this, it is very clearly understood that your specific surface area, what we are trying to talk about, is inversely proportional to the diameter of the particle. So if larger is the diameter of the particle, then lower is going to be your specific surface area. So with this, okay, and what are the units of this specific surface area? The units of this specific surface area can be represented either in meter square per gram or centimeter square per gram, because it's the surface area divided by the mass of that particular particle. So according to Lambe and Whitman, of 1969, we have got different specific surface areas data which is given for different minerals. Let's say in the case of different minerals, what is the approximate specific surface area in terms of meter square per gram, and the water which is going to be absorbed by that particular minerals is what is given by Lambe and Whitman from his studies. Okay, let's say if it is a quartz mineral which is said to be predominantly available in the case of your coarse grain soil as well as in the case of your silty soil deposits, the specific surface area of that quartz particle, as the size of the particle is relatively large, so the specific surface area of that particular quartz particle is approximately around 0.03, meter square per gram, and if the specific surface area is less, then the water absorbing capacity of that particular mineral is also going to be relatively less. So which was approximately found to be 1.5 into 10 to the power of minus 4. In the case of kaolinite mineral, they approximately have found that specific surface area value would be around 10 meters per gram, and the amount of water which is going to be absorbed is 0.5. In the case of illite mineral, as the size of the illite mineral is slightly lower than that of your kaolinite mineral, obvious that the specific surface area is going to be higher in the case of illite when compared to kaolinite mineral. So roughly the illite mineral will have your specific surface area varying in between 80 to 100 meters square per gram, and your water absorption capacity would also get increased, which comes out to be around 5. And the other mineral what we have seen is montmorillonite mineral, where the size of that particular montmorillonite mineral is further smaller when compared to that of the illite or kaolinite mineral. So subsequently, the specific surface area of that particular montmorillonite mineral within a given mass of the soil quantity would be further higher. So specific surface area of the montmorillonite mineral would be approximately around 800 to 1000 meters square per gram, and your water absorption capacity is going to be around 50. Okay. So how are we going to be talking about this water absorption capacity? Okay. So water absorption is what I can write it as the specific surface area of that particular mineral into the thickness of layer of water what is surrounding that particular mineral into the unit weight of water. So that's how you can go on to calculate what is the water that is getting absorbed by that particular mineral what you are referring to, and based on the specific surface area of that particular mineral, then you can accordingly go on to calculate how much is the water absorption capacity of that particular mineral. Higher the water absorption capacity, higher the chances of having the swelling nature exhibited by that particular mineral which is existing in that particular soil. So next, let's go on to understand something about what is called as diffuse double layer. That's nothing but why the water particles are getting absorbed by your clay particle, why water is absorbed by your clay particle. So what is the zone in which the water particles are getting influenced because of the presence of the clay particle? Let us try to understand that. The clay particle generally carries what is called as a net negative charge on their surfaces. I repeat, the clay particle, whenever you are talking about your clay particle, let's say for example, this is my clay particle. So this top and bottom is what we call it as the surface of that clay particle. If this is my clay particle, so this is the top surface and the bottom surface of your clay particle is what I can generally understand it as. So the surface of this clay particle, on either side of this clay particle, the surface is generally what is called as negative charged, and the edges of the clay particle, okay, so this edges are what is considered as your positive charge. They carry what is called as positive charge at the edges, and they are going to carry what is called as negative charge on the surface of your clay particle. As a consequence of that negative charge what is existing at the surface of your clay particle, electrostatic forces exist between the negative surface and the exchangeable cations. So whenever there is a water molecule around this clay particle, because of your hydrogen ions that are existing in the water molecule, those hydrogen ions gets attracted towards the negative surface of your clay particle. So the water molecule gets deposited on the surface of your clay particle, because the surface carries what is called as the net negative charge, and the positive ions what are present in that particular water molecule comes and gets attracted towards your negative charge what is accumulated on the surface of your clay particle. Larger the negative charges are derived from larger specific surfaces. If the specific surface area of that particular clay mineral what you are referring to, if it is high higher the specific surface area, larger is going to be the amount of water that gets deposited on that particular surface of that clay mineral. Molecules of water is just like a bar magnet, which has got both positive as well as negative charge at its either ends. So when we look at what is called as your bar magnet, so bar magnet possesses what is called as positive charge at one end and negative charge at the other end. In the similar way, the molecules of water also do have the characteristics as similar to that of the bar magnet, which possess what is called as positive and negative charge at either ends of that particular water molecule. So when you are looking at, let's say for example, if this is what I am calling it as your water molecule, which is said to be dipolar in nature. Why do we call it as dipolar? Because it is exhibiting the characteristics of positive as well as the negative charge on either ends of that particular molecule. So whenever you have what is called as a clay particle, this is my clay particle, what we are looking at. Okay. So as the surface of the clay particle is carrying what is called as a net negative charge, so the positive ions of this water molecule gets attracted towards the negative surface of your clay particle, and those positive ions gets deposited, the positive ions of that water molecule gets attracted towards your negative surface of your clay particle, and because of which you are going to be seeing that water particles are getting attracted towards your surface of the clay particle. So in the process, in the vicinity, once the water is coming in contact with your clay particle, so water starts moving, water particles, the positive charge of that water molecule gets attracted towards the negative surface of your clay particle, and the negative face of your water molecule gets attracted towards your positive charge, which is there at the edges of your clay particle. Okay, so that's how the water particle gets carried away towards your clay particle, and in the process you are going to see more concentration of water molecules moving towards your clay particle, resulting in what is called as a rigid layer formation of water surface getting developed on your clay particle. Okay, so that rigid layer or strong layer of water is getting accumulated on the surface of your clay particle, and that strong layer of water surface which is getting accumulated on your surface of the clay particle is what we call it as adsorbed water. And when you look at this water molecule, the adjacent water molecule is also getting attracted towards this water molecule, because the positive ions present in that water molecule gets attracted towards the negative ion, negative end of your water molecule, and in the subsequent way the other water molecules also would be getting attracted towards this water molecules, which are relatively getting attracted towards your clay particle. In the process, you are going to see a more concentration of water molecules moving towards your clay particle, resulting in higher concentration of moisture present around the crystalline structure of that particular clay mineral, resulting in more amount of water getting adsorbed by that particular clay particle. So when you look at the viscosity of that particular fluid, what is around the surface of your clay particle, so viscosity of that particular fluid around the surface of the clay particle is going to be relatively high when compared to that viscosity of that particular fluid when the water particles are relatively, which are very far away from your clay particle. In the sense, the effect of force of attraction on the other water molecules which are relatively far away is going to be less. So the viscosity of that particular water fluid or water particles existing around the vicinity of your clay particle, the viscosity is going to be high when compared to the viscosity of the fluid which is in free state. So as you look at the position of the water particle which is relatively far away from your clay particle, so the effect of that force of attraction of the clay particle on that water particle is going to be decreasing with the distance at which that water particle is going to be existing from the position of your clay particle. So this is typically what is called as your clay particle, so which carries what is called as net negative charge on the surfaces and positive charge on its edges. Water molecules are said to be polar in nature. Hydrogen atoms that are existing in your water molecule are axisymmetric are not axisymmetric around an oxygen atom. So the positioning of your hydrogen atoms are not axisymmetric with respect to the position of your oxygen atom. So because of which the CG of your hydrogen atom is not getting coincided with the CG of your oxygen atom, resulting in what is called as your bipolar nature in the case of your water molecule. So as a result, a water molecule has a positive charge at one end and a negative charge at the other end. That is what we call it as your dipole nature, what we are going to have in the case of your water molecule. Dipolar water is attracted both by the negative charge surface of the clay particle as well as any other cations that are existing in the range of what is called as your double layer. The cations in turn are attracted to your soil particles. The surface of the clay particle being negatively charged attracts what is called as your positive ions. That's nothing but your H plus ions that are existing in your water molecule gets attracted towards the surface of your clay particle, and that H plus ions get accumulated on the surface of your clay particle. So this region of attracted positive ions in the solution and the negative surface, negatively charged surface of the clay is what we term it as your diffuse double layer. Okay, so that vicinity in which, or that region in which, where you see the attraction of your water molecules happening towards the surface of your clay particle, so that range of the vicinity of water which is getting attracted towards your clay particle, towards the surface of your clay particle, so that range or that zone is what we call it as your diffuse double layer. So if we look at our earlier slide, so this particular zone of water molecules which are adjacent to the position of your clay particle is what we are calling it as your a rigid layer which exhibits a strong bond between water molecule to that of your clay particle. But however, the other water molecules which are adjacent to this rigid layer are also having some effect of force of attraction of that clay particle on those water molecules which are relatively slightly away from the position of the clay particle. But however, the water molecules which are existing even in this zone has also got some influence on the attraction capacity of your clay particle. So that particular complete zone, the vicinity of that particular water molecules existing in the solution having an effect of force of attraction towards the surface of your clay particle. So that complete zone is what we call it as your diffuse double layer. So this is that range what we are talking about. Okay, so this particular zone, this region of water molecules, whatever are there adjacent to the position of your clay particle, are strongly getting adhered to the surface of your clay particle. So that water molecules is what we are calling it as your adsorbed water. And the other water molecules which are also equivalently getting attracted towards your surface of the clay particle. Okay, so this range of water molecules existing in the solution what we are referring to is nothing but this complete zone is what we call it as your diffuse double layer. And the other water molecules which are relatively far away from the position of your zone of influence, that is what we call it as your diffuse double layer, then these water molecules are said to be called as free water, where the effect of force of attraction of your clay particle is relatively less on that particular water molecules which are relatively far away from the position of your surface of the clay particle. So the concentration of your cation exchange or cation deposition on the surface of your clay particle tends to decrease with the distance of your distance from the position of your clay surface. So if the water molecule is something here, and if the distance from the surface of that clay particle is relatively large, then the effect of that so-called force of attraction on this water molecule on the surface of the clay particle is going to be decreasing with increase in the distance with respect to the position of the water molecule to that of your clay surface. The cation concentration decreases with the distance from the surface of your particle. The innermost layer of your diffuse double layer, which is holding the water particle strongly to the clay surface, that is what we are calling it as your adsorbed water. And this water is said to be more viscous than that of the water which is existing in free state. Free state in the sense there is no effect of this clay mineral on the position of that water molecules existing. So next, moving on to understand what is meant by soil structures. So what are the different ways in which the particle arrangement is going to be existing? That is what we call it as your soil structure. Soil structure means it is the arrangement of soil grains in relation to one another. So that means, let's say one soil grain is like this, another 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 soil grain is like this. So how those soil grains are getting arranged with respect to one another because of the bonding between them or because of any other force of attractions that are existing between them. So how the particles are getting arranged or oriented in the process is what we are going to be calling it as your soil structure. So it's ultimately an arrangement of your soil grain in relation to one another to which this soil grain is coming in contact with. The properties of any soil mass, what we are going to be looking at, is generally a function of how the particle arrangement is existing in that particular soil skeleton structure. If the particles are closely packed to each other, or if the particles are loosely packed from each other, then depending on that, your strength of the soil would be depending on the compressibility characteristics of the soil would be depending on the permeability aspect of that particular soil would be depending on. So broadly, the different types of soil structures what we'll be mostly coming across with is categorized as single grain structure, honeycomb structure, flocculated and dispersed structure, which is mostly seen in the case of your clayey deposits, clayey soil deposits, and coarse grained skeleton structure and cohesive matrix structure, which is seen in the case of your composite soil. Composite soil in the sense a composition of both coarse grained and as well as your fine grained soils. So this typical single grain soil structure is what we are going to be mostly seeing in the case of gravel as well as sandy soil deposits, whereas this honeycomb structure formation is what we mostly come across in the case of your silty soil deposits. And flocculated and dispersed structure is what most commonly seen in the case of your clay soil deposits and your composite soils, in which you are going to be coming across with coarse grained skeleton structure and your cohesive matrix structural arrangement of your grains. So single grain structure means more or less all the grains that are existing in that soil mass would be looking similar, and almost all those particles are what we call it as your bulky grain particles. So such kind of particles is what we call it as your single grained structure, mostly found in the case of your coarse grain soil deposits. When such soils settle out of the solution in water, whenever your soil grains that are present in your water tries to settle because of your gravitational force acting on that particular particles tries to settle. In the process, when those particles are trying to get settled, and the type of soil grains which are undergoing the settlement, if they are coarse grained soil particles, you are going to see the particle arrangement, the way how those particles are going to be arranged themselves to get settled with respect to the position of each other grains existing in the soil skeleton structure is what we are calling it as your single grain structure. Major force causing their deposition, the major force which is acting on such kind of single grain structure or otherwise bulky grain particles is what we call it as your gravitational force, which is otherwise also called as body force. Mainly the force of attraction which pulls your particles to settle down when it is existing in that water solution. So that force is what we call it as your gravitational force or body force. And the surface forces, the effect of surface forces on this coarse grain particles is relatively less, because they do not carry what is called as a net negative charge on their surfaces to develop what is called as a strong bond between one particle to that of your other particle. So bond exists between one particle to the other particle in the case of coarse grain soils because of your the grain irregularity in the grain shapes and so on, based on which one particle gets strongly bonded with the other particle because of that improper projections where you have the contact between the grains. So major force causing their deposition is your gravitational force, and the surface forces are too small to produce any effect on such kind of your coarse grained soils. So there will be particle to particle contact existing in that soil deposit when the particles are getting settled at the bottom because of your gravitational force acting on those particles. And the void ratio attained subsequently in the process when the particles are getting settled. So the void ratio of that particular soil mass, what is getting the particle arrangement, what you are going to attain because of the settlement in the particles. Okay, the void ratio attained subsequently depends on the relative size of those grains, what are getting settled there. So this is what we call it as the loosest packing state in which the particle arrangement is done, where you could see the individual void size is relatively large, and this packing of soil grains in the soil skeleton structure is what we call it as your densest packing of your particle arrangement, where you see the void sizes are relatively small. Next is honeycomb structure. Generally, as I mentioned, it is associated with what is called as your silt deposits. When these silt particles settle out of settle in that particular water solution, which is in suspension state. So in addition to the gravitational force, the size of your silt particle is relatively small. The effect of gravitational force on that silt particles is relatively less. But however, the effect of surface forces plays a significant role on those silt particles, as well as in the case of your clay particles. So surface forces are going to be predominant forces on that fine grained soil particles when compared to that of your coarse grained particles. And gravitational force effect or the body force effect is going to be predominant in the case of coarse grained soil, whereas your effect of surface forces on the coarse grained soils is relatively very, very less. So when particle approach those silt particles which are in suspension state because of the effect of your gravitational force, which is relatively less, and the predominant surface forces which are existing. So because of that, the particles tends to settle at the lower region of your suspension. They will be attracted by particles which are already deposited, as well as the neighboring particles, resulting in deposition. Okay, so as you have what is called as your surface charges existing in the case of your silt particles, so because of that surface charge, one particle gets attracted towards the surface of the other particle. So because of which a bond starts getting developed between the particles which are trying to settle and with the particles which have already settled in that particular suspension. So in the process, you are going to see what is called as a formation of arch shaped. Let's say this is one particle, this is another particle, this is another particle, this is another particle. So you are going to see a typical kind of arch shaped formation while these particles are getting deposited. In the similar way, another neighboring structure of particles are getting deposited like this, which results in another arch shaped formation of your soil grains. Another similar kind of deposition happening, another arch shaped formation of your deposition of the particles happening. So the combination of number of arches leads to what is called as your honeycomb structure. So this is how typically what we call it as your honeycomb structure. So as similar to that of your honeycomb, this soil skeleton structure is also going to be looking like. Next is flocculated and dispersed structure. So what do we mean by flocculated structure? Means whenever your soil grains are having a bond that is existing between because of the edge to edge contact between the soil grains, or edge to face contact between the soil grains, or face to face contact between the soil grains. So in such cases of contacts, whatever we are talking about, edge to edge contact between the clay particle, or edge to face contact of your clay particle, or face to face contact of your clay particle that is existing between individual particles. So you would see a kind of a structure that is getting formed, which we call it as your flocculated structure. Either this is called as flocculated structure, the other is also what is called as your flocculated structure. But in the case, the first one, the grains are loosely packed, whereas in the second case, the grains are tightly packed, are relatively closer to each other. Apart from that, both the structures is what we call it as your flocculated structures, where we see contact exists between one particle to the other particle, either edge to edge contact or edge to face contact or face to face contact would develop between your soil grains existing in that suspension. And what is meant by dispersed structure? Dispersed structure in the sense one particle will not rather have a direct contact to get developed between the other adjacent particle. Rather, what you will see is a dispersing forces, a repulsion forces would be existing between individual particles, because of which one particle tries to move away from the position of the other particles. So such kind of soil grain structure is what we call it as here, dispersed structure. Next is coarse grained skeleton structure. So typically this coarse grained skeleton structure is nothing but it's a particle mixture arrangement where predominant coarse grained particles are there and a very less quantity of your fine grained particles are there in that particular soil mass. So it's a mixture of coarse grained particles with the fine grained particles and their subsequent arrangement of the grains, where first we understand that coarse grained particles are arranged something like this. Let's say one particle, other particle, another particle, another particle, another particle, like this. Whatever the void that is formed in between those coarse grained particles are going to be occupied by your finer particles that are existing in that soil mass. Okay, so the coarse grained skeleton structure can be found in the case of your composite soils. Composite soils in the sense soils containing both coarse grained and fine grained particles. So in which the coarse grained fraction is greater in proportion when compared to that of your fine grained fraction. The coarse grained particles form the skeleton with the particle to particle contact, and your voids between those particles will be occupied by your fine grained soil. So such kind of structural arrangement of the grains is what we call it as your coarse grained skeleton structure. And the other type of structure is cohesive matrix structure. So the cohesive matrix structure is once again found in the case of your composite soils only. But however, this composite soil, which is containing both coarse grained fraction of soil particles and fine grained fraction of your soil particles. Okay, but however, fine grained fraction of the soil particles is very predominant. The quantity of fine grained fraction is going to be very high when compared to that of your coarse grained particles. So in this case of your cohesive matrix structure, the coarse grained particles will be embedded to that of your existing fine grained fraction, which is available in large quantity, and will be prevented from having direct contact of one coarse grained particle to that of your other coarse grained particle. Direct particle to particle contact of your coarse grained particles will be getting avoided because of the large quantity of fine grained particles which are existing in that particular soil mass. So this type of soil structure is relatively more compressible when compared to that of your more stable coarse grained soil skeleton structure. So whenever you come across with such kind of cohesive matrix soil skeleton structures, those soil deposits are relatively more compressible in nature. Whenever loads are applied on it, you are going to see higher amount of compression happening in such soil deposits, more amount of settlements happening in such soil deposits. So next, to move on, we are going to be talking about something very important in this complete geotechnical engineering, that is index properties. So index properties, and whenever we talk about the properties of the soil, we broadly categorize those properties of the soil as index properties and engineering properties. So this index and engineering properties are going to govern the behavior of your soil, what we are going to be talking about. This index properties basically refers to those properties of the soil that indicate the type and condition of the soil, and which will provide a relation to the structural properties of that particular soil, such as your shear strength, compressibility, and permeability. So that so-called index properties, what we are going to be talking about for a particular soil, would be helping us in understanding or in getting an idea of how the behavior of that particular soil is going to be, how the shear strength characteristics of that soil is going to be, how the compressibility characteristics of the soil is going to be, how the permeability characteristics of that soil is going to be, that we are going to be understanding based on what is called as this index properties, because these index properties are going to be telling us like what type of soil it is, how is the condition of the soil, and depending on the condition of the soil, probably how the shear strength of the soil could be, how much could be the settlements in that soil, how much could be the permeability of that particular soil, is something what we can predict. The behavior of that soil can be predicted based on knowing about this index properties of that soil. So index properties are in general divided into two types. One is soil grain properties and the other is soil aggregate properties. In the case of soil grain properties, we are going to be looking at the individual grains based on which we will understand the subsequent behavior of your soil. Okay, that is what we are going to be coming across in the case of your soil grain properties. Now coming to the case of your soil aggregate properties, we are going to be looking the soil on a whole. We take certain quantity of the soil and looking at what are different proportions of particles that are existing in that soil mass, we are going to be understanding the behavior of that particular soil. That is what we call it as your soil aggregate properties. So if we are understanding the behavior of the soil based on individual grains like specific gravity of soil solids, that is based on solid particle existing in that soil. So such kind of property is what we call it as soil grain property. And when we are referring to certain quantity of the soil to understand the behavior of the soil, then we call it as what is called as soil aggregate properties. So these index properties what we are referring to are broadly categorized into grain size distribution analysis and consistency limits. And under this grain size distribution analysis, what does this grain size distribution analysis means? It is all about understanding what are the different sizes of particles, different sizes of grains that are existing in that soil. So, okay, that is what we are going to be understanding from this grain size distribution. So we are going to be looking at each individual grain and we will be categorizing it. Okay, this particular particle is to be called as a sand particle or a gravel particle or a silt particle or clay particle. So accordingly, we will be categorizing by looking at the case of each individual particle. And coming to your consistency limits, so we look at certain quantity of your fine grained soil and we try to perform some various tests on that particular soil to understand the plastic behavior of that particular soil, plasticity characteristics that are going to be exhibited by your fine grained soil. So in the grain size distribution analysis, coming to your grain size distribution, we are going to be talking about what is called as mechanical analysis, which is generally carried out in the case of your coarse grain soils. And we are subsequently going to be talking about what is called as sedimentation analysis, which is otherwise also called as hydrometer analysis or wet analysis, which is carried out in the case of your fine grained soil. So we are going to be talking about, let's say for example, if we are looking at some soil, so we'll try to identify what are the different sizes of particles existing in that soil mass and what are the proportions of each of those sizes of the particles is what we'll try to understand. And then we'll be able to classify that soil as a gravelly soil or a sandy soil or a sandy gravel or clayey gravel or silty gravel. So depending on the different sizes of particles existing in different proportions, we are going to classify and categorize that particular soil. So for classifying that soil, we require what is called as a complete grain size distribution understanding about that particular soil, whether we have large particles or small particles or mixed proportions of particles. So in that mixed proportion of particles, which proportion is higher in quantity, whether it is gravel particles or sand particle or silt particle or clay particle. So that is what we are going to be understanding in this complete grain size distribution analysis. And coming to your consistency limits, in consistency limits, we are going to be understanding the plasticity nature or plasticity behavior of your fine grained soil. So in which we are going to be talking about what is called as liquid limit test, plastic limit test, shrinkage limit test, which we are going to be performing in the case of your fine grained soil. So based on the liquid limit value, plastic limit value and shrinkage limit value, we are going to predict the behavior of your that so-called fine grained soil. Whether that fine grained soil is going to be mostly behaving like a liquid material or would behave like mostly like a plastic material where the structure of that soil mass can be changed according to your requirement. So that's what we call it as your plasticity nature of the soil. Okay, so that's all what we'll be trying to understand under what is called as your consistency limits, which is otherwise also called as Atterberg limits. So in order to get a complete grain size distribution analysis, first what we need to know is what type of test that I need to be conducting on that particular soil, whether I should go for what is called as dry analysis, which is mechanical analysis or sieve analysis, or whether I should go for what is called as your sedimentation analysis. So generally, whenever you look at any particular soil, that particular soil do contain what is called as coarse grain particles as well as fine grain particles also. Then how to first separate coarse grain particles to carry out what is called as mechanical sieve analysis, and how to separate your fine grain particles to perform what is called as your sedimentation analysis. Because without separation of the particles, you cannot talk about how coarse grain particles of different sizes are there, how fine grain particles of different sizes are there. We cannot understand that. So for doing that, what we first do is we take that particular soil for which the grain size distribution analysis is required. So we take that soil, we wash that soil, and we allow that washed proportion of the soil to pass through what is called as 75 microns sieve. I repeat, we allow that solution of water to pass through your 75 microns sieve. All the particles which are of sizes less than 75 microns will get carried away with the water when it is sieved through your 75 micron sieve size. And all the particles which are of sizes greater than 75 microns are going to be retained on that particular sieve, which has got opening size, which is 75 microns. So all particles of smaller sizes or sizes less than 75 microns will pass through the openings that are available to that in that sieve, and the particles of sizes greater than 75 microns gets retained on the surface of that particular sieve only, because the size of the particle is more than that of the opening what is available there. Now, all those particles which are retained on your 75 microns sieve is what I'll call it as your coarse grain particles. All the particles which carried away with the water when sieved through your 75 microns, those soil grain particles which carried away with the water, which are going to be collected, and those soil grain particles are called as your fine grain particles. So coarse grain particles is now separated from the fine grain proportion. That coarse grain proportion which is in wet form is now we are going to be placing it inside an oven for drying them, so that all those coarse grain particles would behave independently. And coming to your fine grain proportion which got mixed with your water, that also we are going to be placing inside the oven. Water gets evaporated, and what you are going to be seeing is a kind of a clay layer which is getting formed there, and that clay layer is what we should break it down, because clay particles has to be behaving independently. It's not that one clay particle gets stick to the other clay particle. If one clay particle sticks to the surface of the other clay particle, then the size of that particles which got joined together is going to be higher, which indicates that though it is fine grain soil particle, but when a group of such fine grain soil particles are strongly getting bonded to each other, resembles to a situation where the size of the particle is something large, and which should not be understood it as what is called as coarse grain particle. So we have to properly ground the proportion of your fine grained particles, so that you will not be seeing any lumps of soil grains which are strongly bonded to each other, which would certainly give you a wrong indication that it is what is called as a coarse grain particle, but rather it is what is called as your fine grain particle. So after understanding of the separation of fine grain particles and coarse grain particles, then on the coarse grain particles proportion, you are going to carry out what is called as mechanical analysis to get the grain size distribution curve, to know what are the different sizes of the particles are there, and how much proportion of those sizes of particles are there in that soil mass. In the case of coarse grain soil particles, we carry out mechanical analysis or sieve analysis. In the case of fine grain particles, which pass through your 75 microns, so on that particular soil mass, we are going to be conducting what is called as sedimentation analysis or hydrometer analysis to understand what are the different sizes of those fine grain particles existing in that soil mass. So broadly, we are going to be talking about two types of grain size analysis for understanding or for getting a complete picture of what is called as your grain size distribution for that particular soil. One is what is called as mechanical analysis, which is otherwise also called as sieve analysis, generally performed on coarse grain soils. That's nothing but particles of sizes greater than 0.075 mm, which is otherwise also called as 75 microns. And the other type of grain size analysis is what we call it as hydrometer analysis, which is generally carried out on the soil grains, which are said to be fine grained soil particles whose sizes are less than 75 microns, where the diameter of the particle is less than 75 microns. For measuring the distribution of particle sizes in a soil sample, it is necessary for us to conduct different types of particle size tests, that is your sieve analysis as well as your sedimentation analysis. First, for separating your soil particles, as I mentioned, we are going to carry out what is called as wet sieving. Wet sieving in the sense your soil is thoroughly mixed with water, and upon thorough mixing of water to that particular soil where you are going to be seeing that when that slurry is allowed to pass through your 75 microns, coarse grain particles gets retained and fine grain particles gets washed away with the water. So whatever is getting retained is collected and oven dried to get what is called as coarse grain soil, and whatever is passing through that sieve, 75 micron sieve, is collected along with the water, and it is also oven dried and then crushed in order to get the particles of sizes less than 75 microns, which indicates what is called as your fine grain particles. So we are going to carry out what is called as your dry sieve analysis on your coarse grain particles of sizes greater than 75 microns, and we are going to subsequently talk about what is called as hydrometer analysis or wet analysis or sedimentation analysis, okay, which is carried out on your particles of sizes less than 75 microns. Now let us understand, yes, I am able to collect my coarse grain particles from that soil mass, for which I am going to carry out my mechanical sieve analysis. So in this mechanical analysis or sieve analysis, what we are going to be doing is we are going to be using sieves of different sizes. Different set of sieves is what we are going to be using, which has got different size openings. Okay. So using sieve analysis, what are we going to understand? What are we trying to find out? We are trying to find out what are the different sizes of coarse grain particles that are existing in that coarse grain soil mass. So using sieve analysis, one can determine the grain size distribution of the soil and classify the soil into whether it is sand or whether it is a gravel, depending on which proportion, whether sand particles proportion is high in that coarse grain particles or gravel particles proportion is high. Depending on that, we categorize it as sandy soil or gravelly soil. Sieves, what are we, the sieves that we are going to be generally using are made of woven wires. You are going to have mesh containing some wires which are systematically arranged to form what is called as an opening, which is certainly square shaped opening. Sieves are made of woven wires with square openings, which decrease in size as the sieve number increases. So whenever we talk about a particular sieve, that sieve can be designated by what is called as sieve number or sieve size. I repeat, any particular sieve what we are going to be looking at can be designated either by its number or either by its opening size. The method of sieve analysis described here is applicable for soils that are mostly granular with very less content of fines or without any content of fines existing in that particular soil. So sieve analysis only classifies soils into sizes and does not provide information anything about what is the shape and type of particles. Okay, so from the sieve analysis, what we are trying to understand or what we are trying to get is the different sizes of particles only. Okay, we are not able to retrieve any information with regard to what are the different shapes of particles that are existing in that particular soil mass. The quantity of the soil sample that we are typically going to be using in this mechanical sieve analysis is approximately around 500 grams. We take 500 grams quantity of your coarse grained soil particles, which is going to be placed on top sieve, where you are going to be seeing that a set of sieves which are systematically arranged one over the other, with the largest sieve opening, opening of your sieve size at the top and the smallest towards your bottom. So when the largest is at the top and in the decremental order, if you are arranging your set of sieves, once you start sieving that particular soil, largest particles gets retained on the top sieve, and the next smaller particles through that openings will move to the next sieve. And whatever particles that cannot pass through the second sieve gets retained on the second sieve, and the particles which can pass through the second sieve will get traveled or will get transferred into your third sieve. Likewise, systematic distribution of particles takes place depending on the opening of the sieve, and accordingly the particles gets readjusted into different set of sieves upon mechanical shaking of those set of sieves. You have set of sieves systematically arranged in a decremental manner, and on top of that first sieve, you are going to be placing your coarse grained soil particles, and this complete set of sieves are going to be placed in what is called as a mechanical sieve shaker, where that mechanical sieve shaker continuously shakes your set of sieves, because of which the particles will get travel from one sieve to the next sieve to the next sieve, depending on their sizes. The particles gets retained on different sieves that are existing in that set of sieves which are systematically arranged. So this is typically what I am calling it as a sieve. Okay, so this square opening, whatever we have here, is what we are calling it as your sieve size. That opening is what we are calling it as your sieve size. So likewise, we will have different sizes of sieves that are going to be used. When it comes to the case of soil mechanics, the largest sieve what we are going to be using is 4.75 mm, and the smallest sieve that we are going to be using is your 75 microns. So whatever particles that gets retained on your 4.75 mm sieve is what I can simply call it as your gravel particles, and all those particles which are getting retained in between the sieves of sizes 4.75 mm to 75 microns is what I can categorize it as sand particles, and all those particles of sizes less than 75 microns is what you can categorize it as your fine grained soil particles. And in that fine grained soil particles also, whether it is containing silt or whether it is containing clay is what we can understand from your sedimentation analysis. How much percentage of silt or how much percentage of clay is what we can clearly understand from what is called as your sedimentation analysis. So in the sieve analysis, a series of sieves having different size openings are stacked one over the other, with the largest sizes over the smallest size. And at the bottom, ultimately, you are going to be using a pan. Pan is nothing but it's a kind of a plate which has no openings to it, where any of the fine grained particles, if at all existing in that coarse soil grains, any fine grained proportion of particles, if they are existing, they can be collected in that particular pan which is placed at the bottom. So this is how your set of sieves are going to be systematically placed. You are going to initially take an approximate quantity of 500 grams of coarse grained soil particles, and which you are going to be placing on your top sieve. And after pouring your coarse grained particles, or after placing the coarse grained soil particles onto the top set of first sieve, then close the top sieve with a lid. If you don't close that with a lid, when you are trying to shake your set of sieves, there is a possibility that particles which are there on the top can spill out. So your set of sieves are going to be then arranged in what is called as your sieve shaker, so that your sieve shaker will start shaking your set of sieves, because of which particles starts moving from one sieve to that of your other sieve and gets retained on their respective sieves depending on the sizes of those particles. So once the sieving is done, let's say for approximately 5 to 10 minutes, we continue to sieve with the help of mechanical sieve shaker, or manually also you can be doing it. So once that sieving is assumed to be properly done, then collect all those soil grains which got retained on each of those sieve and measure the weight of that particular soil particles which got retained on each of that individual sieve, what you are referring to. Okay, so here you, as I said, a sieve can be designated by its number or by its sieve opening. Okay, so generally we are going to be coming across with sieve set of sieves varying in between sieve number 400 to sieve number sieve number 4 to sieve number 200. So sieve number 4 is the sieve which has got your sieve opening of 4.75 mm, and sieve number 200 is nothing but it is the sieve which has got an opening of size 75 microns. So we'll remove all those individual sieves and we'll collect all those soil grain particles which got retained on each of that set of sieves, and we are going to be measuring the weight of the soil grains which got retained on each of that particular sieves. So to conduct a sieve analysis, one must first oven dry the soil sample, as I mentioned, and then break all the lumps in case if at all you have got some lumps, break down all those lumps to have that particles to behave independently. Instead of getting bonded to each other, the particles has to behave independently. So for coarse grained soils, a sieve analysis is performed in which a sample of dry soil is shaken mechanically. The weight of soil grains retained in each sieve is subsequently measured, and since we know what is the total mass of the soil quantity which we have placed, and as now we have measured what is the weight of the soil grains or the mass of the soil grains which got retained on each of that set of sieves, then we'll be subsequently going on to calculate what is called as percentage finer value. Okay, so how are we going to calculate that percentage finer? Means we are going to calculate what is called as percentage finer depending on the amount of soil grains that got retained on each of those individual set of sieves which are used in that mechanical sieve analysis. So since the total mass of the soil sample is known, the percentage retained or passing through each sieve can be calculated. Either the percentage retained on that sieves can be calculated or percentage passing through each of that sieve can be calculated. Can be determined by weighing the amount of soil which is retained on each sieve after the shaking process is completed. The cumulative percentage quantity is finer than the sieve sizes. Sieve sizes means passing through each of that particular sieve opening of that corresponding sieve are then subsequently determined. We'll try to see how to calculate that particular percentage finer value is what we'll subsequently see. So let's say that you have taken some 500 grams quantity of the soil, coarse grained soil, which is initially placed on the top sieve. Upon sieving process, some grains got retained on first sieve, some grains got retained on the next sieve, and subsequently on the other sieves. So some quantity of soil grains got retained. Mass of the soil grains got retained on the first sieve, let me say M1. M2 is the mass of the soil grains got retained on the second sieve. Likewise, if I have n number of sieves that are used, so mass of the soil grain retained on each of the set of sieve, I'll try to measure. And what is the cumulative quantity of the soil which got retained, if I want to understand. So let's say if I'm referring to that of your first sieve, what is the total quantity of soil which got retained over and above that first sieve? It is only nothing but mass of the soil particles which got retained on the first sieve. Now coming till your second sieve, when I am looking at till your second sieve, how much quantity of soil grains got retained? Cumulatively, how much total quantity of soil grains got retained? If I want to know, that's nothing but mass of the quantity of soil which got retained on second sieve plus first sieve. Likewise, if I am looking at your third sieve, okay, at this third sieve position, if I am looking at, what is the total quantity of soil which is getting retained till your third sieve? That's nothing but mass of the soil particles got retained on third sieve plus second sieve plus first sieve. Likewise, I can calculate till the bottom sieve. Now, what I have calculated is the cumulative mass of the soil particles which are getting retained with respect to each of that sieve what we are looking at. Now, what I ultimately wanted to calculate is percentage finer value. How much percentage of the soil grain particles are finer than that particular sieve size? So if I want to know that, then what I can understand here is let's say I am looking back again with respect to the first sieve position. How much percentage of the particles, let's say out of 100 percentage of particles, how much percentage of the particles are finer than your first sieve size? Let's say the first sieve what I have used is 4.75 mm. So how much percentage of the particles out of that total percentage, 100 percentage of the soil grains, how much percentage of the particles are finer than your 4.75 mm? How do I get it? So it's nothing but 100% of particles minus percentage of particles which got retained on your first sieve. How do I get percentage of particles which got retained on the first sieve? It's nothing but mass of the soil grains which got retained on the first sieve divided by the total mass what you have allowed to pass through your first sieve, or total mass of the soil what you have considered there. It's nothing but total mass of the soil is simply 500 grams. Out of that 500 grams, how much got retained on first sieve? Let's say it is something 20 grams. So 20 by 500 gives you percentage of soil particles retained on your first sieve. Then how much percentage of particles are passing through your first sieve then? 100 minus what is retained on your first sieve. 100% minus the percentage of particles which are retained on your first sieve. Likewise, through your second sieve, how much percentage of particles are getting passed? That's nothing but 100 minus the cumulative percentage of the particles which got retained till second sieve. Likewise, how much percentage of particles are passing through your third sieve? That's nothing but 100 minus the cumulative percentage of particles which got retained till third sieve. Likewise, I can go on to calculate my percentage finer value with respect to different sieve size, and depending on that percentage finer value with respect to the different sieve size, we can go on to plot a graph between percentage finer value on the vertical axis and your sieve size value represented on the horizontal axis, that too on a logarithmic scale. This is typically some test result which I have included here, which would give you an idea like how your percentage retained values are calculated, or percentage passing or percentage finer values are subsequently calculated. So this is the expression what we are going to be using for calculating what is called as your percentage finer values. So once that test data from the mechanical sieve analysis, once you understand what is the percentage finer value corresponding to the different sizes of the sieves, you are going to be plotting a graph for what is called as percentage finer data represented on the vertical axis, and your particle size data indicated on the horizontal axis, and that too on the logarithmic scale. Logarithmic axis scale is what we are indicating on the horizontal axis. So for now, we'll be stopping our discussion for today, and in our next class, we'll continue our discussion from here, where we are going to be seeing like once the data from your mechanical sieve analysis is obtained, then how we are going to be drawing the portion of your grain size distribution curve for the coarse grain particles, what we have exclusively separated from the complete soil mass. Because the complete grain size distribution curve for that soil I am going to be getting partly from the coarse grain distribution analysis, and partly for the fine grain soil distribution analysis. Okay, so for now what we have talked about is only your coarse grain particles grain size distribution, and from that mechanical sieve analysis we are going to be plotting only the portion of your grain size distribution curve corresponding to the particles of sizes greater than 75 microns only. And from your sedimentation analysis, we are going to get the portion of your grain size distribution curve corresponding to the particles of sizes less than 75 microns. So with this, we'll stop our discussion for today, and in the next class, we'll continue our discussion from here, where we are going to see how that data has to be plotted, and subsequently how we are going to be getting that so-called grain size distribution curve, and upon getting that grain size distribution curve, what are we going to be using that grain size distribution curve data for subsequently classifying the soil. How do we do that based on the grain size distribution curve is what we'll try to understand.